If you don't know already, a recession is coming. This is going to be a global recession and it's going to be pretty bad. In this video, I'm going to explain everything about it. When it's going to happen, why it's going to happen, what's caused it, how it's going to affect you, and how long it's going to last. If you want to know all the stuff you need to know, but in layman's terms, everyday understanding about the upcoming recession, and it's coming soon, in this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. So keep watching. So first question, is a recession coming? Yes, it is. When's the recession going to start? Well, realistically, estimates say between October and December in 2022. Global recession definitely affecting the US, definitely affecting the UK, and much of the Eurozone and other countries around the world as well. So why is this recession going to happen? What is the trigger for it? Well, every recession in reality has a different cause of it. So I could go back and give you the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis, for example, but let's stick with what is going to cause or what is causing the current recession that many of you will notice through the cost of living crisis, but won't become official. And if I'm being honest with you, is probably only going to get worse than what it is at the moment. Now, you might be thinking, well, it already feels like there is a recession. It's not actually just official yet, but in reality, it's actually going to get worse than where it is at the moment. So let's explain what's caused this and how it's going to get worse from here, and then what you're going to be expecting. So what has caused this recession? What's happening? So to explain this in layman's terms, I'm going to take you back to school. So you're in school, but you don't have any money. None of your friends can lend you any money, but you need £10. You can go to the school shop to buy yourself some snacks and a bit of lunch. So you decide to go to a kid that you know can lend you some money. They're not really a friend or anything, but you know who they are and they know who you are. And that guy, when you walk up to him and say, look, can I borrow a tenner? He goes, okay, no problem. But if I lend you a tenner, I want £15 in return. Okay, sure, you say, I'll pay you back in 2 weeks. You're quite happy with getting your £10 for the tuck shop, so you decide to tell all your friends about it. And when they need money, they also go to the same guy and they borrow £10 and they agree to pay him back £15 too. Now, for the sake of argument, you can't go to your parents or anyone else to get this £10. You keep going to this same kid. He keeps giving you £10. You keep paying him back £15. And it goes on for a while like this. Now, this money lending kid who's lending you and your friends money, he's the equivalent of what is known as a central bank. A central bank in the US would be the Federal Reserve. In the UK would be the Bank of England. That's basically what it is. And a central bank operates effectively by lending money to other banks. If you're a member of the public, if you're a business, you can't go to a central bank to borrow money from them. You can only do it if you are another bank. Now, this kid who's lending everybody money, well, his uncle happens to be the head teacher. And the head teacher doesn't want any other kids going out and lending money as well and being in competition. So he bans any other kid in the school from lending money unless it goes through this main central bank lending money kid. Now, this central bank money lending kid, he doesn't want all 500 kids in the school coming to him every 5 minutes. He's got his own life to live with, so he only wants to deal with certain kids in the senior year. And that tends to be you and your friends, basically. But you've got other kids in the younger years, well, they also want to borrow money. So you realise probably be a good idea for you to go and borrow some money on their behalf from the central bank money lending kid. And what you do is just make a little bit of money yourself. For every £10 they borrow from you, you also go and charge them £16. So you make a little bit of margin, a little bit of profit for yourself lending to the younger kids, because they can't go and approach the main central bank money lending kid. They come through you. So you make a little bit of money out of it. This is the equivalent of what is known as a commercial bank. So when you think of a bank, Barclays, HSBC, NatWest, anything like that, that is a commercial bank. The only issue now is that many of the kids that could afford to pay him £15 to borrow £10, well, they cannot afford to pay £20 back just to borrow the £10 in the first place. So they say to the central bank money lending kid, could you instead give me a little bit longer to go and find you the money to pay off the £10 loan that I've lent you? And the central bank money lending kid says, okay, no problem, I'll give you twice as long to pay, but instead of paying me £20, You've actually now got to pay me £25 if you want to borrow that money over a longer period. This is what is known as interest payments. Now, this main central bank money lending kid, he's not silly, and he realises that if all the money has to go through him, there is a way he can make a little bit more money. So instead of lending out £10 and only asking for £15 back, he starts saying, if you want £10, I need £20 back. But if the central bank money lending kid was sensible, what he would do at this point is say, right, if I'm lending out £10 and I'm asking for £25 back, but they're struggling to be able to pay me back, I might not get any of my money back. And what he should do is put a stop to lending them money in the first place, because otherwise he won't get any money back and things will get out of hand really quickly. But after a little while, a few of the kids start struggling to be able to pay back the amount of money they owe. After all, they've only borrowed £10 in the first place, and now some of them are having to pay back £25. So things start getting a little bit difficult. Now, this is basically the idea of how central bank works, because money on its own, well, it's just a bit of paper. So traditionally, the way that money was valued is that in a bank, a central bank, you would have to have the equivalent value of gold sat there to be able to have the same amount of cash. So if you're lending money out to someone, you can say, right, I've lent £10 out, but I've also got £10 in my piggy bank in the value of gold to demonstrate the value of what that £10 is actually worth. That's traditionally how a banking system used to work. So let's say, for example, that the parents of this money lending central bank kid, they know that he's got a few pound coins, a few notes, whatever, that he lends out to people, but they're all right with it as long as he has the same equivalent amount of gold to that value of money that he's lending out in his piggy bank in his bedroom. So that's fine. But one day the kid realizes that, hang on a minute, there's plenty of kids coming to me asking to borrow money who probably can pay it back further afield. Maybe they're in a different class or something like that, and they've heard about him lending them money, and he wants to lend them money. But he doesn't have enough gold in his piggy bank to be able to be to the same amount of value of money that he wants to lend out. And he's found a few extra £20 notes in his pocket somewhere, but he doesn't have that money in gold in the piggy bank. But he still wants to lend it out to make more money. So he has an idea. The idea that he has is, instead of valuing what he has against the money that's in his piggy bank in value of gold, he simply says, right, I'll decide what these notes are going to be worth. I'm not going to listen or take any notice of what my parents said about gold in my piggy bank being the same value as what I'm lending. I'll start deciding what I'm going to lend out, and the value of that money is coming through me anyway. I'll just decide what it's worth, right? Well, this is what is known as the fiat money system. Okay, now the fiat money system is actually not an abbreviation. It's a Latin word that means it shall be done. It has nothing to do with the car manufacturer Fiat, by the way, no relation, just happens to have the same terminology. But this system itself, the fiat money system, was brought in and replaced the gold holding system that banks used to traditionally work by. And this means now that all of a sudden they can lend out money that they don't necessarily have in value, because they're declaring what that money's worth themselves in the first place. They don't need the value of gold to be the equivalent of it in their holding storage. Now, this new fiat money system that he's got going on, well, this sounds great, because now he can lend out as much money as he wants without having to worry what he's got in his piggy bank. But there is a problem, because the value of the money that he's lending out is now completely open to manipulation. But why is the central bank money lending kid going to be bothered by that? He's getting more money out of people because all of a sudden he can start lending out whatever he wants, and therefore that all these people owe him money. So he's got quite a bit of money now that he's making, but he's only got a certain amount of £20 that he's found. So he can only lend out a certain amount of money. So he comes up with another idea. He's got some extra cash, so outside of school on the weekend, he decides to go down the shops down the local town and buy himself a high quality money printing machine, because with that high quality money printing machine he can now print some more £20 notes and give even more money out to people who owe him even more money in return, and guess what, he makes more money out of it. Happy days. Now, he's lending out all this money, and some of the kids are still in the position where they can't afford to pay it all back. But instead of just saying, well, I'll stop lending you money and only concentrate on lending money to people, or the kids who can actually afford to pay it back, I tell you what I'll do. I'll print you some more money and give you some more 20s, And in return, you can use those 20s then to pay me back the loans that you already owe and borrow, and then pay back the separate loan of the money that I've lent you to pay back your first loan in the first place. Before you know it, all these kids are borrowing money to pay off a loan of money they've already borrowed, and the cycle goes on. The central bank money lending kid is fine because he keeps getting money rolling into him, and he keeps lending more money out, and the more money he prints, the more money he makes. So he just keeps going and going and going. Now, you and your mates, even though you realise this looks a bit crazy, you're also in the position where you're making good money out of it, because you're then lending out money to other kids who are then owing you money, and before you know it, although you're having to pay back money to the central banking money lending kid, you can just raise your rates a little bit more, lend out more money to other people. You've still got cash coming in because of the printing machine. You're fine. But even though you know this looks a bit strange and things are probably getting a little bit out of hand, you ignore it because you're making money, so you brush it under the carpet. Now, this money printing thing, in economic terms, it is what is known as quantitative easing. It's basically the printing of money. Now, if the value of money that you have, that £10 is in the shop, is worth £10, you're fine. But if you keep printing notes endlessly and there's so many £10 notes around all over the place, then guess what's going to happen? That school tuck shop and the shops in town, well, they're going to start realising, well, all of these kids are coming in to buy all these items and they're buying more and more bits. There seems to be a good amount of demand for the items that they have. So a lot of these shop owners, what they decide to do is then go, well, I can make some more money out of this myself. I'll start putting up my prices. But with the shops putting up their prices, all of a sudden, what you would have got for your £10, you're now only getting what you would have got for £5 beforehand. So the kids start coming back to you and your friends to borrow more money, and you realise, well, hang on a minute, I can lend more money because people want more. I'll go back to the central bank money lending kid and go, can you print me some more money so I can lend more money out to them? And this cycle goes on and on and on. But the problem comes when all of a sudden all the shops in town start realising, well, I've put my prices up, and instead of bringing in one £20 note for a certain amount of items, I'm now getting given hundreds of £20 notes to be able to buy the same amount of items. And there's just too much cash going around, and there's not really any relevance to what it's valued. There's so much money in terms of cash, but it doesn't really hold any value. Now, this is what is known as inflation. So these kids that went out, that were buying items that were flush with cash, all of a sudden realised they can't get as much for the money as what they did before. It's still got some value, but it's not worth as much in the same way that it was before. So they start complaining to you and going, well, hang on a minute, what's going on here? I've asked to borrow money from you, and this money seems to be worthless. So you go to the central bank money lending kid in the playground and you complain to him, and he tells you where to go. On your bike, he says. But one day there's a bit of a problem. The shop owner of the school tuck shop, well, he has the supplier come to him and say, well, hang on a minute, I'm not happy with what you're doing. I want to take your shop. My dad used to own your school shop. I don't want you having your shop anymore. I want to take it. And I'm going to make it really difficult for you unless you sell me your shop or give me your shop. I don't even want to pay for it. You give me your shop now. And he starts getting really difficult about it. And they have a bit of a nasty argument. And this goes on and on and on for a while. And basically the result of it is there's not as many sweets being supplied to the shop. There's not as much food being supplied to the shop. And all the kids in the school itself who want to go to the shop, well, they're having to pay more and more money to buy the same amount of sweets that they were before. So things are really starting to get out of hand. If the school shop scenario isn't bad enough, well, this same supplier who deals with a school shop, he also supplies to some of the shops in town. And they start finding that they don't get as many items supplied to them because he starts getting nasty with them as well. So to compensate, they also put their prices up even more to be able to make the equivalent amount of money for the items that they're buying. But this means that if the value of the money that the kids in the school had in the first place to go out and buy stuff was getting out of hand, it's getting even worse now because the value of the items that they want to buy are getting more and more expensive. Before you know it, they need so much cash to buy anything, things are getting really, really difficult. Now, if you haven't guessed it already, this owner of the supply company who's trying to bully his way into buying the school shop, well, that's meant to be Vladimir Putin. But notice he's not trying to buy the school shop, he's just trying to bully the owner out of it and take it from him. Now, the head teacher realizes this is a little bit of a problem and things are getting out of hand. So he tries to mediate, but he doesn't really have full control over the supply company owner. He just tries to smooth things out a little bit, but he knows the school shop owner, likes him, and tries to help him out a little bit, but he can only do so much. This goes on for a little while until the head teacher notices that when he goes to town, he's struggling to go and buy certain stuff himself. And he gets fed up of this and he sees where the problem is coming from. So he goes to the central bank money lending kid in the school playground and aims to put a stop to it and says, right, you're going too far now. You need to stop printing money left, right and centre. You need to stop lending out money to kids who can't afford to pay it back. We need to get this under control. Now, at the school shop itself, it realises it doesn't have as many customers coming in because a lot of the kids that were the poorer kids, well, they can't afford to borrow money off you and your friends to be able to go out and then buy the items in the school tuck shop that they want. And the same shops in town, they realise that less customers are going to them because only certain customers can afford to buy their stuff. So the school shop and the shops in town start realising this. So they start dropping their prices of what they're selling it for. So then more people can come in and be able to afford to shop there in the first place. And this takes a little while to sort itself out. The amount of cash that was flying around town, the tons and tons of money that had no value, well, a lot of that cash starts getting taken out. The headmaster starts seeing it coming through the school, and the central bank money lending kid is then tasked by the headmaster to start taking a lot of that cash out and putting it in the bin, burning it or whatever, so it doesn't exist anymore. And after about a year or so, things start to balance again. The majority of the kids can then start affording to buy stuff in the tuck shop again. The amount they can afford to borrow, then the loans that they're having to pay back for it become affordable again. And all of a sudden, the cycle returns back to normal. But it takes about a year to find that. And in the meantime, it ends up going up and down. And the poorest kids, the ones who can hardly afford to borrow any money in the first place, well, they're going hungry all day for quite a while of that year. But after a while, things start to settle and things start to find their equilibrium again. And therefore, you move out of a period of what we would call recession and back to a normal period, if you like. But it takes about a year to reset the whole thing. Now, I'm hoping this example of the school playground and things like that is something that most people can understand, because broken down like that, it just makes sense. But that's basically what's going on with the world economy at the moment. We're at the point where the amount of money that's being lent out and the amount of cost of items that the school shops are charging, well, it's getting a little bit too expensive for people. And all of a sudden, the people that can't afford to borrow any more money or don't have enough money there, it's getting a little bit difficult. And the value of the money that is there, well, it's a bit of a paper value. It's not as worth as much as it was before. And you're getting to the point where the head teacher's going to have to step in at some point soon. And that bit's coming very quickly because things are starting to get out of hand, basically. When they start talking about inflation going to 10%, that means the value of those notes, they're not going anywhere near what they were before. It's probably nearer 20% in reality. The price of a McDonald's cheeseburger yesterday went from 99p that it was at for years to now £1.19. It's gone up 20p. Well, that's the same thing that's happening in the main economy. And that head teacher is going to step in soon. So hopefully this has given you an understanding of how a recession works, but this particular recession and what is causing it. So hopefully this video itself gave you an explanation of what is going on in this recession, what's causing it, why it's happening, how long it's going to go on for, how it will affect you, etc. If you do have any other questions, anything else you want to know, do put them in the comments below. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do and click the bell icon so you won't miss any one of our forthcoming videos.